The rancher drank from the sacred stream. The Apache chief declared, "You must marry my blind daughter." His horse's hooves kicked up little clouds of dirt, leaving a trail that shimmered in the early morning light. The man had been traveling for days across vast plains, through rocky paths and over winding trails. He was tired, his clothes covered in dust and his lips cracked from thirst. The heat of the day was already pressing down, and the weight of the saddle made every movement ache. But he had a mission. He needed water, not just for himself but for his cattle. The animals had been walking for hours, their mouths dry, their heads low, searching desperately for anything that could quench their thirst. As he looked around, he noticed the landscape changing. The flat, dry plains gave way to a narrow canyon, shaded by tall, jagged cliffs. The sound of rushing water reached his ears, a sweet, clear, refreshing sound that made him almost forget his exhaustion. He urged his horse forward, the animal responding eagerly to the presence of water. And then in a small clearing he saw it, a stream shimmering like liquid silver in the sunlight, twisting and turning through the rocks. It was beautiful, almost magical. The rancher's heart leaped. At last his search was over. Without a second thought, he dismounted and knelt by the water's edge. The cold liquid ran over his hands, refreshing and cool. He cupped his hands, bringing the water to his dry lips, drinking deeply, greedily, as if he could drink the fatigue from his body. Each sip brought relief, and he leaned back, feeling the strength return to his limbs. He laughed softly to himself, a low, relieved sound. "Finally," he whispered, "something that makes this long journey worth it." But what he did not see was that this was no ordinary stream. The water he drank from was sacred to the Apache tribe who lived in the area. It was not just a source of life. It was a symbol of respect, tradition, and connection to the land. The stream had been protected for generations, and anyone who approached it without permission was considered to be disrespecting the spirits of the land. From a distance, hidden among the rocks and trees, the tribe's scouts had been watching. They had noticed the man approaching, his heavy boots crushing the dry brush, his eyes searching, always searching. They had whispered among themselves, their voices barely audible. "He does not know," one had said. "He does not know the rules of this land." Another shook his head. "He must be stopped before he brings misfortune." But by the time they realized he had reached the stream, he had already taken a long drink, leaving ripples dancing across the sacred water. The scouts watched silently as the rancher wiped his mouth, looking around as if nothing had happened. They knew that bringing him before the chief was necessary, and so they silently signaled to each other. Horses moved swiftly and quietly, and within minutes the rancher found himself surrounded. Not in anger, not yet, but with a strong and respectful presence that made him sit up straight and realize he was no longer alone. The men who approached wore traditional Apache clothing, made of soft leather and decorated with feathers and beads. Their eyes were alert, steady, and filled with a seriousness that warned the rancher that he had crossed into a place of rules he did not yet understand. His hand instinctively went to the small knife at his belt, not because he intended to fight, but out of habit, a reflex from years of living in the wild. The scouts stopped at a careful distance, then gestured for him to come with them. The rancher hesitated. "I didn't mean any harm," he said, his voice steady but unsure. "I was just thirsty. My cattle, they needed water." The scouts did not respond immediately. They simply waited, watching, ensuring he understood that words alone might not be enough. After a moment, one of them stepped forward, motioning for him to follow. Slowly, cautiously, the rancher nodded and mounted his horse again, letting them lead him through the winding canyon paths. As they walked, he looked around, noticing how different the land felt when he was no longer alone. The air was cooler near the stream, filled with the smell of wet earth and wildflowers. Birds flew overhead, their calls echoing through the canyon. He could hear the faint murmur of the stream behind him, the same water that had given him relief. It felt strange to think of it as forbidden, but the serious faces of the scouts reminded him that he must respect the ways of the people who lived here. Hours passed, the sun rising higher in the sky. Eventually, they arrived at a large clearing where the tribe had gathered. Children peeked from behind tall grasses, and elders sat in quiet circles, watching with calm authority. At the center of them all was the chief, a man with strong features and wise eyes, whose presence commanded respect from everyone around him. He wore a traditional headdress, simple yet dignified, and his voice, when he spoke, carried the weight of tradition and the land itself. The rancher dismounted, feeling the dust and exhaustion weighing him down again. He bowed his head slightly, trying to show respect in the only way he knew. "I am sorry," he said, his voice low but sincere. "I did not know this water was sacred. I only meant to quench my thirst." The chief studied him carefully, his eyes deep and unreadable. He was quiet for a long moment, as if listening not just to the words but to the intention behind them. The rancher felt sweat trickling down his back, nervous not only about his mistake but about what punishment might come. In the silence, he realized the seriousness of his actions. Drinking from the sacred stream was more than a simple act. It was a violation of trust, a trespass against customs that had been honored for generations. Finally, the chief spoke. "You have entered our land and taken from what is sacred," he said slowly. His voice was calm, not angry, but each word carried weight. "You have shown no harm in your heart, but ignorance is not always forgiven. Our laws are old and they are firm. You must understand the ways of this place, or there will be consequences that may follow you for the rest of your days." The rancher swallowed hard, nodding. "I understand," he said, hoping his sincerity would be enough. "Please, I will do whatever is needed to make amends." The chief remained silent a moment longer, then gestured for the man to come closer. The rancher stepped forward, his heart pounding, unsure of what the chief would say next. Around them, the tribe watched, not with anger but with attention, ready to see how this moment of potential conflict would unfold. It was in that moment, standing before the chief, that the rancher realized his journey was no longer about finding water for his cattle or crossing the plains. It had become a journey of understanding, respect, and perhaps the beginning of a connection to a world he had never known. The stream, the canyon, and the tribe, all were teaching him that life was more than survival. It was about harmony, respect, and the lessons that come from listening. And as he looked into the chief's steady eyes, the rancher knew that whatever came next, he must face it with humility, courage, and a willingness to learn. Because in the wilds of the canyon, where the sacred water flowed, there were lessons that could not be ignored. The rancher stood quietly as the chief's eyes seemed to examine every corner of his mind. The wind carried the scent of pine and earth through the clearing, and the murmurs of the tribe faded into a tense silence. The rancher felt the weight of his mistake heavier than the sun beating down on his shoulders. He had thought that drinking from the stream was a simple act of survival, but now he understood that it was tied to traditions older than any he had known. Every ripple of the sacred water, every stone by the stream, seemed alive with meaning. The chief finally spoke again, his voice calm but firm. "You have entered our land, you have taken from what is sacred, and now you must face the consequences. But know this, the law is not always harsh. It is just. It tests the heart and the spirit." The rancher nodded quickly. "I will do anything," he said. "Please tell me what I must do to make it right." The chief studied him for a long moment, as if listening not only to the words but to the sincerity behind them. Then, unexpectedly, he gave a small nod. "You will stay with us," he said. "You will learn our ways. You will show respect not only in word but in action." The rancher blinked, unsure if he had understood correctly. "Stay with you?" he asked. "For how long?" "That will be decided by the spirits," the chief replied. "You must show your heart. You must walk in our world, in our ways. Only then will your actions be judged." The rancher felt a mixture of fear and relief. He had expected punishment, perhaps a fine, perhaps a warning, but living among the tribe was a path he had never imagined. The chief's words carried the weight of opportunity and danger all at once. He realized that he could not simply return to his ranch, to his old life, until he had learned the lessons the land demanded. A young scout stepped forward, leading the rancher away from the main clearing. The scout's movements were quiet, precise, and full of practiced skill. The rancher followed, his horse moving carefully along the narrow trail, the sound of hooves soft against the earth. As they walked, the scout spoke quietly, explaining the basic rules he must follow. "Do not touch what is not yours," the scout said. "Do not speak unless you are spoken to. Watch carefully. Listen even more carefully." The rancher nodded. "I will do my best," he said. "I only want to learn." The scout glanced at him briefly, then said nothing more, guiding him to a small lodge at the edge of the clearing. Inside, the lodge was simple but warm. A fire crackled in the center, and soft mats of woven grasses covered the floor. The smell of burning wood mixed with herbs filled the air. The rancher was offered water, plain water this time, not from the sacred stream, and he drank slowly, savoring every drop. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, the chief called a gathering. The rancher, unsure of what was expected, followed cautiously. The tribe sat in a circle, their faces calm but attentive. At the center, the chief addressed the rancher directly. "You are here because you did not know," the chief said. "Ignorance is not always fault, but it must be corrected. To live among us, you must understand our lives, our beliefs, our hearts, and you must learn respect." The rancher nodded again, feeling the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. "I understand," he said simply. The chief continued, his voice steady. "There is more," he said. The rancher's heart skipped a beat, unsure what could come next. The chief's eyes softened as he added, "You will also meet my daughter. She is blind, but she sees more than many who have sight. You will learn from her as well, for respect is not only for the land but for each other." The rancher was startled. He had expected hard work, perhaps tests of courage or patience, but meeting the chief's daughter was unexpected. He swallowed and bowed his head slightly. "I will do as you ask," he said. "I will honor your rules." The next morning, the rancher awoke to the sound of birds calling and the faint murmur of the stream nearby. The scout from the day before led him to a small garden behind the lodge. There, tending carefully to rows of herbs and vegetables, was the chief's daughter. She moved with quiet confidence, her hands gentle but skilled, feeling her way along the plants with care. When she sensed the rancher approaching, she turned her head slightly and smiled, a soft, understanding smile that seemed to pierce through the tension in his chest. "Good morning," she said, her voice gentle but clear. "You are new here." "Yes," the rancher replied. I made a mistake yesterday, but I am here to learn. I want to do what is right." She nodded slowly. "The land is sacred," she said. "The water is sacred, but so is respect. And respect can be learned." Over the following days, the rancher began the slow process of learning. The tribe had him help with daily chores, gathering firewood, tending to the animals, repairing fences, and learning how to care for the crops. Each task seemed simple at first, but he quickly realized that every movement, every decision carried deeper meaning. It was not just work. It was a lesson in patience, observation, and understanding. The chief's daughter often worked beside him, guiding his hands gently when he struggled, correcting him when he made mistakes. She did not speak harshly or scold him, but her quiet presence demanded attention. The rancher began to notice that she could sense far more than he could see. Every change in the wind, every rustle of the leaves, every shift in the animal's behavior. Though blind, she seemed to know the land intimately, moving through it with grace and certainty. One afternoon, as they repaired a fence along the edge of the clearing, she spoke softly. "You must learn to watch not just with your eyes but with your heart," she said. The land tells its story if you are willing to listen. The rancher looked at her, absorbing her words. At first he thought it was a simple saying, a proverb, but as he worked he began to understand. He noticed the way the soil shifted under his hands, the pattern of the wind through the grasses, the soft call of distant birds. He began to feel connected, not only to the land but to the people around him, to the tribe that had welcomed him cautiously, and to the girl who guided him. As days turned into weeks, the rancher's respect for the tribe grew. He understood that drinking from the sacred stream had not been merely a mistake. It had been a lesson. The tribe's customs, their rules, and their ways of life were a reflection of generations of experience and wisdom. He began to see the world differently, not as a place to conquer or pass through, but as a living, breathing entity that demanded respect and care. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant reds and golds, the chief approached the rancher. "You have worked hard and listened well," he said. "You have begun to understand, but there is still a test of the heart remaining. You will meet the full measure of respect and commitment soon. Be ready." The rancher nodded, though his heart pounded with uncertainty. He did not know what the test would be, but he understood that it would require not just strength or skill, but humility, courage, and the ability to listen. That night, as he lay on the mat in the lodge, he thought about the stream, about the chief's words, and about the girl who had guided him. He realized that his journey was no longer just about survival. It had become a path of learning, of growth, and perhaps of understanding a way of life that was different but deeply meaningful. The stars above the canyon seemed brighter, more alive, as if the universe itself were watching him, guiding him, and teaching him that respect and understanding were the true keys to life. And as he drifted into sleep, he felt a quiet determination settle within him. He would honor the tribe, learn their ways, and face whatever challenges the chief set before him. For he now knew that the canyon, the sacred stream, and the people of the tribe had become more than a stop on his journey. They had become a part of the story of his life, a story he would carry with him forever. Weeks had passed since the rancher had arrived in the Apache village. Each day had been filled with labor, learning, and quiet observation. He had grown stronger, not just in body but in understanding. The land, once just a place to ride across for water or cattle, had become alive to him. He could read the patterns in the wind, hear the stories of the stream, and feel the rhythm of life in the tribe. Yet despite all that he had learned, there was a quiet tension in the air, a sense that something important was about to happen. One morning, the chief summoned the rancher to the central clearing. The rancher, now more accustomed to the customs of the tribe, rose early, his heart beating with anticipation. He wondered what the chief might ask of him next. Perhaps it would be another task, another lesson to teach him patience and respect. He rode toward the clearing, noticing the sun's rays shining through the trees, casting long shadows that danced across the ground. As he entered the circle, the chief's expression was serious but not unkind. The rancher dismounted and bowed his head in respect, waiting for the chief to speak. Around them, the tribe had gathered, sitting quietly in anticipation. Children peeked from behind the adults, their eyes wide with curiosity, while the elders watched with calm, knowing expressions. The chief's voice broke the silence. "You have learned much," he said. "You have labored honestly, listened carefully, and begun to understand our ways. But there is one matter that must now be decided, a matter that will test the heart and spirit in a way nothing else has." The rancher's pulse quickened. He straightened, trying to prepare himself for whatever the chief might ask. He had expected challenges, tasks, and lessons, but the chief's words carried a weight he could not yet measure. The chief paused, letting the silence stretch, giving the rancher time to feel the gravity of the moment. "You have entered our land, drank from our sacred stream, and yet you have shown humility and respect. Because of this, you are not to be punished as others might be. But respect must be returned, not only to the land but to the family that protects it. The rancher swallowed hard. I will do whatever you ask, he said, his voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. Please tell me what I must do. The chief looked directly at him, his eyes calm and unflinching. You must marry my daughter, he said simply. The words hung in the air, striking the rancher with a force he had not anticipated. The tribe watched silently, some nodding, others simply observing. The rancher felt as if the world had shifted beneath his feet. He blinked, trying to understand. Marry your daughter, he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. But I barely know her. I have only just met her. The chief nodded. You do not know her fully, nor does she know you. That is why this will be a test, not of knowledge, but of heart. You must show respect, care, and honesty in all your actions. Only then will you understand what this union means. The rancher's mind raced. He had never imagined such a thing could happen. Marriage had been something far in the future, something he had thought about only in passing, not as a part of a sacred custom he barely understood. And yet, he could see the seriousness in the chief's eyes. This was not a punishment in anger. It was a decision rooted in tradition, honor, and the continuity of the tribe. He looked toward the chief's daughter, who had been standing quietly to the side. Her face was calm, her head tilted slightly as she listened. Though blind, she seemed to sense every movement, every intention. When she turned her face toward him, he felt a strange sense of connection. She did not speak immediately, but there was a quiet dignity in the way she held herself. You must understand, the chief continued, that this is not a simple arrangement. You will learn from each other. You will respect each other. Your actions will speak louder than words. If you are willing to accept this path, you will be welcomed into our family fully. If not, you must leave our land and return to your own world. The rancher exhaled slowly, feeling a mix of fear and resolve. He had come to respect this land, the tribe, and its customs. He had learned patience, humility, and understanding. And now he realized he must demonstrate these lessons in a new way, one that involved not just the land but a person, someone whose life was intertwined with the tribe in ways he could only begin to imagine. I accept, he said finally, his voice firm. I will honor your rules and I will learn to live with your daughter in respect and care. The chief nodded, a small smile touching his lips. Then it is decided, he said. You will begin your journey together. She will guide you as you have begun to guide yourself. Remember that respect, patience, and honesty are the foundations of all strong bonds. The rancher felt a wave of relief mixed with anxiety. Relief because he had accepted the chief's decision and was willing to embrace it. Anxiety because he did not know how he would navigate this new relationship. Yet he also felt a spark of curiosity. The chief's daughter had already taught him so much without speaking harshly or demanding obedience. Perhaps there was more to learn from her than he had imagined. That evening, the rancher and the chief's daughter sat together by the fire. The tribe had left them in a quiet corner, giving them space to speak and observe one another. She reached out, taking his hand lightly, feeling the calluses from years of work and travel. You have done well, she said softly. You have shown patience and respect. That is the first step. The next step is understanding each other. The rancher nodded. I want to understand, he said. I want to do what is right, not just for me, but for you, for your family, for the tribe. She smiled faintly. Then you are already learning. Understanding does not come immediately. It grows slowly, like a plant in the sun. You must be patient and you must watch carefully. In the days that followed, the rancher continued to work alongside the chief's daughter, learning not only the customs of the tribe, but the ways of living together in trust and respect. They tended the garden together, collected firewood, and shared meals, each learning the rhythm and habits of the other. She guided him gently, showing him how to feel the land, sense changes in the weather, and anticipate the needs of the animals. The rancher began to see that marriage, in the eyes of the tribe, was not simply a legal bond, but a partnership built on shared responsibility, understanding, and respect. The chief's decree was not a punishment but a challenge, a test to see if he could rise to the level of care and integrity the tribe expected. One afternoon, as they walked along the edge of the stream, she spoke again. "Do you see the water?" she asked. "It is still sacred, even to those who drink from it daily. Respect is not a one-time act, it is a way of living." The rancher looked at the sparkling stream, reflecting the sun's rays like scattered diamonds. "I understand," he said. "I will honor it always." She nodded, sensing the sincerity in his voice. "Then you are learning," she said, "and that is the most important lesson." Weeks turned into months. The rancher grew more skilled, more patient, and more aware of the deep connection between the tribe and the land. He also grew closer to the chief's daughter, not through words alone but through shared experiences, silent understanding, and mutual respect. He began to feel that this unusual arrangement, once so shocking, was now a path of growth, discovery, and unexpected friendship. And though the path ahead was still uncertain, the rancher knew one thing with certainty. He had entered a world far greater than he had imagined, a world of wisdom, tradition, and honor. And with each passing day, he became more prepared to face the challenges and lessons that awaited him, guided by the chief, the tribe, and the remarkable young woman who would soon become his partner in this journey of life. The morning sun rose slowly over the canyon, spilling golden light across the village. The rancher stood at the edge of the clearing, his hands gripping the reins of his horse. Today was different. Today, he would take the first true step into a life that he had never imagined, a life with the chief's daughter, a life intertwined with the tribe, the land, and customs he was still learning to understand. His heart raced with anticipation, a mixture of nervousness and quiet excitement. The chief's daughter appeared, as always, calm and composed. Her hands moved gracefully, brushing over the plants she had been tending, feeling their shapes and textures with her delicate fingers. When she sensed his presence, she turned her face toward him and smiled softly. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice gentle but firm. The rancher nodded, though a flutter of anxiety remained. "I am," he said. "I will do my best." They walked together to the central lodge, where the chief awaited. The elders had gathered, forming a respectful circle around them. The tribe watched silently, sensing that this was a moment of transition. The chief's eyes met the rancher's, calm but penetrating. "Today marks the beginning of a new journey," he said. "It is not the end of learning but a new path, one that requires care, respect, and patience." The rancher bowed his head. "I understand," he said. "I will honor this path." The chief's daughter moved closer, placing her hand lightly on his arm. The rancher felt the warmth of her touch, a quiet reassurance that he was not alone in this new chapter. Though she could not see, her presence was strong, her confidence unshakable. Together, they walked into the lodge, where the ceremonial preparations had already begun. The elders presented them with simple but meaningful items: woven blankets, carved wooden tokens, and ceremonial beads. Each item carried a symbol of the tribe's respect and the bond they were about to witness. The rancher received each gift with reverence, understanding that they were not mere objects but representations of trust, responsibility, and shared life. The ceremony itself was simple, yet powerful. Words were spoken in the soft, melodic rhythm of the tribe's language, conveying blessings and guidance. The rancher listened carefully, absorbing every syllable, knowing that these words carried wisdom older than any history he had known. The chief spoke once more, his voice carrying authority and warmth. "You will live together, learn together, and respect one another. Your actions will honor not only yourselves but the tribe, the land, and all who came before you." After the ceremony, the rancher and the chief's daughter began their life together in earnest. They shared the daily tasks of the village, from tending the garden and gathering firewood to caring for the animals and preparing meals. Each task became a lesson, teaching the rancher not only practical skills but patience, observation, and humility. He learned to feel the land, sense its moods, and act in harmony with its rhythms. The chief's daughter remained his guide and teacher. She showed him how to sense changes in the weather, recognize the tracks of animals, and anticipate the needs of the village. She corrected him gently when he made mistakes, her voice calm and steady, never harsh. Slowly, he began to trust her guidance, realizing that her blindness did not limit her vision. It sharpened it in ways he could not yet comprehend. One evening, as they returned from gathering herbs by the stream, the rancher spoke quietly. "I did not expect this life," he said. "When I first came here, I thought I was only seeking water for my cattle. Now, I feel like I am learning to live in a way I never imagined." The chief's daughter smiled. "Life often surprises us," she said. "We do not always choose the path, but we can choose how we walk it. You have learned patience, respect, and care. That is why you are ready for this new life." Days turned into weeks, and the rancher grew stronger and more confident in his role. He began to notice subtle changes in himself. He moved with greater awareness, spoke with more thought, and felt a deeper connection to the land and people around him. The chief's daughter became not only his guide but his partner, someone whose insight and understanding shaped his actions and thoughts. One afternoon, as they repaired a fence along the hillside, the rancher paused to catch his breath. He looked at the chief's daughter, who was carefully checking the alignment of the wooden posts. "You teach me so much without saying much at all," he said. "I feel like I understand the land and the people more because of you." She smiled faintly. "Understanding comes from observation and listening," she said. "You are learning to do both. That is how respect grows." Their bond deepened through shared experiences. They cooked together, laughed together, and sometimes sat in quiet reflection by the stream. Though words were sometimes few, their actions communicated care, trust, and commitment. The rancher began to realize that partnership was not built on grand gestures or declarations, but on everyday acts of attention and thoughtfulness. One morning, the chief approached them with a task. "The land needs tending," he said. "There is a new field to prepare. Work together and learn from each other. Show that you can act as a team." The rancher and the chief's daughter accepted the challenge. They worked side by side, clearing stones, turning the soil, and planting seeds. The rancher noticed how she moved with ease and precision, sensing the land's contours and patterns. He followed her lead, feeling more confident and capable with each step. Together, they transformed the field, their actions reflecting a growing understanding and partnership. As the days passed, the rancher began to see the true depth of the chief's daughter's wisdom. She taught him not only about survival and labor, but about life, compassion, and balance. He realized that her blindness had not limited her. It had allowed her to sense and understand things that many with sight could not perceive. Through her guidance, he learned to listen, to feel, and to observe with care. One evening, after a long day of work, they sat together by the fire, the stars shining brightly above the canyon. The rancher spoke quietly, his voice filled with gratitude. "I have learned so much," he said, "more than I ever imagined I could, not just about the land but about life and about respect and about trust, and I have learned it all from you." She reached out, taking his hand gently. "And you have learned it well," she said. "But remember, learning never ends. Life is full of lessons, and each day offers a new chance to grow. Together, you and I will continue to learn, to respect, and to live fully." The rancher smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest that went beyond friendship or duty. He felt a deep connection, a bond built on shared experience, mutual respect, and quiet understanding. For the first time, he felt at home, not in a place he had come to by chance, but in a life he had earned through effort, humility, and care. Weeks turned into months, and the rancher and the chief's daughter became inseparable in the village. Their partnership was noticed by the tribe, who saw the respect and cooperation between them as a model of unity and understanding. Children watched them with curiosity and admiration, while elders nodded approvingly, recognizing that the rancher had truly become part of their community. One day, as they worked together in the garden, the rancher paused to look at the chief's daughter. "I never expected my life to change this way," he said. "I thought I was only coming here for water for my cattle. Now I see that I have gained something far greater, a home, a community, and a partner in life." She smiled softly. "Life has a way of guiding us," she said. "Sometimes it takes unexpected paths to teach the lessons we need. You have chosen to walk this path with care and respect. That is why you are ready for all that comes next." The rancher nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace. He realized that the chief's decree, once so shocking, had become a blessing. It had guided him to a life of understanding, partnership, and growth. He had learned to honor the land, the tribe, and the woman who had become his guide, teacher, and companion. As the sun set, painting the canyon in shades of orange and gold, the rancher and the chief's daughter sat by the stream, their hands intertwined. The water flowed gently, sacred and eternal, reflecting the journey they had undertaken together. And in that quiet moment, the rancher understood that life's greatest lessons often came in unexpected forms, and that true partnership was built on respect, care, and shared experience. The rancher knew that this was not the end of his journey, but a new beginning. A life of learning, understanding, and unity awaited him, guided by the wisdom of the chief, the strength of the tribe, and the insight of the remarkable young woman who had become his partner. And with each passing day, he grew more certain that he had found not only a home but a place where his heart and spirit could truly belong. The days grew longer, and the seasons slowly changed. The rancher had fully settled into life among the Apache. The land, once a place of unfamiliar rules and hidden dangers, had become familiar, almost alive in ways he had never imagined. He knew the rustle of leaves before the wind reached them, the pattern of animal tracks across the soft earth, and even the subtle shifts in the stream's flow. Every day brought new lessons, some simple, some profound, but all shaping him into someone who belonged here, someone who understood what it meant to live in harmony with the world around him. The chief's daughter was always by his side. Together, they worked, learned, and grew. At first, he had worried about the unusual circumstances of their union, uncertain how he could build a bond with someone he barely knew. But as time passed, he realized that the chief's decree had been a gift, a chance to learn humility, respect, and trust in a way no other experience could have offered. Their partnership had deepened into a strong friendship, one rooted in understanding and mutual care. And through this, the rancher discovered the joy of connection beyond words and appearances. One morning, the rancher rose before the sun, the cool air carrying the scent of earth and morning dew. The chief's daughter was already awake, feeling her way along the path to the stream. She greeted him with a soft, warm smile. "Good morning," she said. "The land is ready for our work. Are you prepared?" The rancher nodded, feeling a quiet determination. "Always," he replied. They worked side by side, tending the crops and repairing fences. Every movement, every task was a lesson in patience and attention. The rancher had learned to watch carefully, listen deeply, and act with thoughtfulness. No longer did he rush through the work. Now he understood the value in deliberate, careful action. And the chief's daughter, ever perceptive, guided him without judgment, helping him see what he could not yet notice on his own. As they paused to rest, the rancher spoke quietly. "I have learned more than I ever thought possible," he said. "Not just about the land, but about life itself. I used to think that survival meant moving from one place to another, taking what I needed. Now, I see that it is about understanding, respect, and balance." She nodded, her smile gentle. "The land teaches those who listen, and you have learned to listen, not just with your ears, but with your heart. That is why you are ready for the next stage of life here. You have shown that you can live in harmony with the land, the tribe, and with others. The rancher felt a sense of pride and humility all at once. He knew that the journey he had taken, from a weary traveler seeking water to a trusted member of the tribe, had changed him profoundly. And he realized that his greatest lessons had come from the people around him, especially the chief's daughter, who had guided him patiently, showing him how to see the world in ways he never could have imagined. As the weeks passed, the rancher began to take on more responsibilities within the tribe. He helped organize work for the younger members, taught newcomers the importance of respect and patience, and shared the lessons he had learned about the land. The chief often watched him quietly, nodding in approval. He saw that the rancher had transformed from an outsider into someone who could carry forward the tribe's values, a bridge between the old ways and those who had not yet understood them. The chief's daughter remained his constant companion. Their bond had grown beyond the formal structure of marriage or obligation. They shared laughter, quiet conversation, and moments of reflection by the sacred stream. Though she could not see, she sensed his presence, his intentions, and his thoughts. And he, in turn, learned to rely on her guidance, appreciating her insight, strength, and wisdom. Together, they formed a partnership built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. One day, the chief called the rancher to the central clearing. The elders and tribe members were gathered, their faces calm and expectant. The rancher approached with a sense of quiet anticipation, wondering what new lesson or responsibility awaited him. "You have worked well," the chief said, his voice strong and steady. "You have learned the ways of the land, the tribe, and the heart. You have shown respect, patience, and understanding. Now you are no longer a guest. You are a member of our family. Your journey has reached a point of acceptance and trust." The rancher felt a swell of emotion, a mixture of gratitude, humility, and pride. He bowed his head in respect. "I am honored," he said softly. "I will continue to honor the land, the tribe, and all who have taught me." The chief's daughter stepped forward, her hand reaching out to touch his arm. "You have grown into this role," she said, "not because of the words of ceremony, but because of the way you have acted, listened, and cared. That is why you belong here." The tribe murmured quietly, acknowledging the rancher's transformation. Children smiled, elders nodded, and even the animals seemed to sense the calm harmony that had settled over the clearing. The rancher looked around, realizing that he had found not only a home but a community, a life filled with purpose and meaning. From that day forward, the rancher and the chief's daughter lived fully as partners, sharing the responsibilities and joys of their life together. They continued to care for the land, teaching others what they had learned. They laughed, shared stories, and supported one another through challenges and triumphs. Each day brought new lessons, not in punishment or fear, but in understanding, respect, and love. The rancher often reflected on his journey. He remembered the day he had first drunk from the sacred stream, unaware of the consequences. At the time, he had thought it was only a moment of survival, a small act of necessity. But now he saw it as the beginning of a path that had transformed his life entirely. It had led him to the tribe, to understanding, and to a partnership that went beyond words or appearances. One evening, as the sun dipped below the canyon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and gold, the rancher and the chief's daughter sat together by the sacred stream. The water flowed gently, reflecting the colors of the sky. He reached out, taking her hand in his. "I never imagined my life could change this way," he said softly. "I came here seeking water for my cattle, and now I have found a home, a family, and a companion I respect and admire more than I can express." She smiled, feeling the warmth and sincerity in his words. "Life often takes unexpected paths," she said. "We do not always understand why things happen, but if we walk with respect, patience, and care, we can find meaning and happiness even in the most surprising circumstances." The rancher nodded, gazing at the stream, the land, and the people who had become his family. He felt a deep sense of peace, a realization that he had found his place in the world. He had learned to listen, to respect, and to act with care, not just for himself, but for the land, the tribe, and those he loved. As the stars began to shine above the canyon, he knew that his journey had reached a place of harmony and acceptance. He had been tested, guided, and transformed. And through it all, he had discovered that true belonging comes not from what one takes, but from how one lives, with respect, patience, and a willingness to learn. The rancher and the chief's daughter continued their life together, each day deepening their bond and understanding. They faced challenges, yes, but they faced them together, guided by the wisdom of the tribe, the sacred land, and the trust they had built. Their partnership became an example to others, showing that respect, care, and humility could create strong and lasting connections. And so, the rancher who had once stumbled upon the sacred stream, unaware of its importance, had found not only water for his cattle but a life richer than he had ever imagined. He had been given a chance to learn, grow, and transform. And in doing so, he had become a part of something far greater than himself. A life of harmony, respect, and enduring connection to the land, the tribe, and the remarkable woman who had guided him every step of the way. In the quiet moments, when the wind rustled through the trees and the water flowed gently over the stones, the rancher felt gratitude for the lessons, for the trust, and for the path that had led him here. He understood, finally, that life's greatest gifts often come disguised as challenges, and that the true measure of a person is not in the obstacles they face, but in how they respond, with respect, humility, and an open heart. And so, the rancher and the chief's daughter lived their days fully, learning, growing, and walking together on a path shaped by the sacred stream, the wisdom of the tribe, and the deep, abiding understanding that comes from shared life and mutual respect.